Hey guys, I'm Mark,
I'm Alon.
and welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up. Well, welcome listeners to another episode of the Next Man Up podcast. This is Mark, and on behalf of Alon, we are excited that you have joined us for yet another episode, and we have a treat for you. We've got a conversation that's going to range across two different episodes. Today we'll bring you part one, and then next week we'll drop part two. And we are talking with Curtis McKenzie. Curtis is a former police officer. He's a local business owner. He's a husband. He's a father. He's got an incredible story to tell, and we get into some pretty deep places. In fact, this episode may be a little bit more explicit than you are used to here on The Next Man Up, but it is well worth it, and it is good, and we were thrilled to be able to capture Curtis's story, his wisdom, his experience, and to be able to bring it to you. So that is what's coming up. Okay, without any further ado, let's get to our conversation, part one, with Curtis McKenzie.
Curtis, so good to have you here, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah. I've been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks since we spoke about it. Well, since you gave me the opportunity a couple of weeks ago. Dude. I thought that was really neat. I felt pretty damn special. So
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, good to have you, man. I know like your story a little bit and what you're doing. I know you as a father, a fellow father, and so me, Mark, we just want to just jump straight into your story if we could. Dude, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I consider myself a Columbus native via Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and parts in between. Truth of the matter is, I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My stepfather, who really raised or helped raise me, was in the Marine Corps, and as a result, we moved 452 times in the course of 10 years.
Wow.
Now, I've got to do some wonderful things. I got to be in some really neat places and be exposed to a ton of stuff as a result. So really no complaint. But 75, Mom had finally decided that I'm done with this relationship that is toxic, and I'm taking you and your little brother, and we're going to move to a place called Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know a squat about it, but I've lived here since then, and you know what? I've gotten to learn to really love the community. It's a great place to get opportunities and be. Well, you know what? It's been a wonderful place to raise a family.
Okay. And how many? So you got two kids, correct?
I do. I have two children.
Okay.
I have a son who's 22. He is currently serving in the Army. He's over in Germany right now. He's a combat medic, and I'm very proud of him.
Okay.
My daughter is 16 and is doing what 16-year-olds do. Although she does have a job, which is I feel very, very proud of her for that.
Are you saying those are like not common? Like,
I think unfortunately it's not.
Yes, you're right.
I think in today's technological age that we live in, with the relationships that are really based on likes rather than real communication.
Yeah.
I think that's. I think it's a sad function of where we are as a society.
It's different, right? It's different.
And one thing that I had always instilled in both my children was, look, when you're 16, you've got to get a job. That's just part of it. And it has to be a job in the public sector.
Huh. So you're very specific.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you know what? Fast food is a miserable job. However, fast food teaches you humility. And it teaches you how to communicate with people, whether you like it or not.
Okay.
And if depending upon the manager that you have, it can be something pretty special. They're going to teach you basic math skills. They're going to teach you communication, just as far as being able to speak to people in general terms.
Interesting.
And that's just my take.
Okay.
I mean, it was just one of those things. I was very specific about that. And it also teaches you, look, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're going to earn an honest living, and you're going to realize, you know what? Maybe I should try to do something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's important. But I think it's important for our kids to figure out what it is that they're good at and what they're not good at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of that character building process, right?
Positively.
Yeah.
Totally. Now you've held a couple of different jobs. I know you now as like the part owner of Governor's Cigar Lounge, but you've been on a force as well, correct?
I have.
Okay.
I have. I was a police officer back in the 80s when well, gosh, the truth of the matter is everybody wanted to be Sonny Crockett. I know I did. I mean, when we were kids, you grew up and you were like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to be a pro football player. Well, okay, well, how about a plan B?
Right.
I'll play baseball.
Days have not changed, man. Days have not changed.
Well, I was too little for football, so automatically that made me a baseball player.
Okay.
So then you had a plan C, of course, as well,
C
right?
came.
Well, yeah, right. You know what? In when I grew up, and it's not as though I'm that much older, but the truth is, when I grew up, you went into the service, or you went to college, or you got a job. And those were really your three options coming out of high school directly. A lot of the smart kids I knew went to college. And a lot of the kids I knew went in the service. We all ended up getting jobs, but it kind of hinged on where you were in your life at that particular time. If you were able to just go directly into school, well, good on you, but it didn't always work.
Okay.
I went to go into the service, follow on, came out of that military background. I had, my real father, Jack, was in the Navy. He was actually a rescue diver in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Peacetime, but, what a cool job, right? But recruited by the Cleveland Indians.
No way.
As a utility outfielder. Now, his dream was to play for the Chicago Cubs. So back in the 50s, guess what? You could make more money going into the Navy than you could play in minor league baseball.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So he took off and he said, I'll join the Navy.
Yeah, all right. More money.
Okay. Yeah. So he did that. So I had that bit from Jack, and then Lynn, which was my stepfather, of course, Marine Corps, blah, blah, blah. We got to hear about that on a daily basis. And those were just patriotic beliefs and values that were thrown in there.
Okay.
So came my turn. I went to the Army, and they did not accept me. At the time, I had a bleeding ulcer.
Okay.
And they said, you know what? You can't come in right now. However, come back in 6 months. Well, 6 months when you're a kid is an eternity.
Oh, yeah, it's forever.
And I was, I'm just going to be a policeman instead. And so, and that is the roundabout story. And that is how I got into that, into law enforcement. And, I got to do some really neat things. I got to work with the sheriff's office down in Hocking County. Going through the police academy, I got to work a lot with the city of Columbus because of the Reynoldsburg Police Academy being out on East Main Street.
Yeah.
And what we would do was we would go out and we would ride with the guys on 12th Precinct. So we were just kind of tag-along guys. But as a result, you got your training in the city. And there was some fantastic players.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I'm gonna put pause on that because I like to get into that a little later. But I've heard you mention father, stepfather. So you growing up, you had two dads.
I did.
You had two dads. So tell me, what was it like? Your relationship with your stepdad, with your dad. How did it affect you as you were growing up? because I want to get into like your journey to manhood, and I'm sure both had some, whether it was good or not good, impact on you as you grew up. And so I'm wondering what your journey was with your dad's and your journey in manhood.
Well, I did take the time to write all that down on a blank computer screen right now because my laptop ran out of juice. All right, but truly,
but it's your life story.
A little bit. It really is, and I'll be brief because it sometimes goes in a dark direction. My father, Jack, left the scene before I was 2.
Okay.
All right. And my fondest memories, let me start this. Let me start by saying you can edit this, right? So you might have to. Let me start by saying my journey through childhood with 2 fathers was really kind of 2 worlds. My father was a very, very successful businessman. And as a result, he was truly a workaholic. And that was, I think that was more that era of the way men treated that whole family life. I provide for the woman takes care of the child. I'm not saying every dad was like that, but I'm saying you can definitely go back through history.
Kind of a cultural
and see
trend
that.
there.
It was a cultural, societal norm. Well, that really kind of fit the mold when it comes to my father. If you describe Jack McKenzie, that is what you would see. He was a workaholic and he was an alcoholic. Okay. Now he was not an abusive drunk, not toward me. I've heard stories later on where he was not so nice to the women in his life. However, you know what? I never saw it, and quite frankly, he's gone now, and that's not something that that I would drudge up and go, "Gee, Dad, you were really lousy," So when I got to be with Dad, Jack, he was always, we were doing outlandish things. I mean, in some of the just premier locations. I mean, I got to do some really neat things, and I was exposed to really a cultural high as far as being the country club kid. You know, I mean, I was swinging a golf club like Tiger Woods at, at 4 and 5.
Yeah, okay.
But it was because my grandmother lived in a gated community in Highlands, North Carolina.
Okay.
On the golf course, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so for the 2 weeks in the summertime, you would get that, right? Well, Lynn, that's not how we lived.
Okay.
I mean,
and this is your stepdad.
This is my stepfather, right? We had 5 boys in a house, and it was very regimented. You know, you got up, you made your bed, you did this, you did that. Off to school you went. You came home. If we were in the grocery store, we were in a single file line walking in the grocery store.
Oh, so different today.
It's the military at home, right?
These are the orders of the day, man.
Right,
If you reached out for that candy bar in the checkout line, chances are you were going to get swatted. Yeah. And it wasn't a smack on the hand; it was a cuff to the back of the head.
Wow.
Now I don't say that to be woe is me, because it was another norm.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of the way, okay, well, I've got to be on this behavior and I've got to be on this behavior then. So I kind of learned that whole chameleon line as I grew up.
Switching back and forth.
You know? And long story short, it provided for me the opportunity to see life in a different way, just another paradigm. And as a result, because I was exposed to some of the nicer things in life, I realized living in the other environment, this is not how I want to live. Okay. I want to strive for this, and I want to do better. Now you wheel it back around to your journey into manhood and fatherhood. Mm-hmm. I think it's safe to say that all dads or all men who I think it's rare that men don't want to become a father.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And I think if you are a man of character, then your vision of you being a father comes with, well, I want them to love me, and I want them to adore me, and I want them to cherish me, and I want them to obey me, and I want them to respect me, ultimately.
Sounds about right.
Right? We as men, it's nice to come home to a house where your wife loves you, but really, you want that respect. You want to be respected in your own home because you know that you're trying your damnedest and you're doing your best for your family. I know that was an issue that I had to kind of deal with. I had to kind of humble myself to the fact that, you know what, look, you're not going to get it right, man.
Yeah.
However, don't be afraid to ask for help and talk to your fellow guys. Talk to the guys in the church and talk to the guys that are your buddies. Hey, you know what, my 3-year-old's doing this and I have no idea what to do.
Help, SOS. Yeah.
Right?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that respect thing, though, it's wired in
It's
men.
in our DNA.
Yeah, it's like
Yes.
we want that.
Yes.
We need that in relationships.
Absolutely.
we need that. In fact, we could do a whole riff just on that respect thing.
And
but
that's
you're,
what I was
you're
trying
spot
not to.
on. You're
I
spot
was trying
on.
not to go there, but
Yeah.
I agree with you.
It's just this need that we
Yes.
have, right?
It is an inherent need in men. And it's likened to women need to feel loved.
Yes.
Our wives, our girlfriends, our daughters, they need to feel that.
Yeah.
They need to feel that. F-E-E-L, right? Yeah. Where we need to know that we're respected.
Yeah.
And that's just that weird wiring.
Yeah, you're talking the whole love and respect dynamic. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're familiar with Emerson Eggerichs and the work that he's done.
I actually am a little bit.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the whole concept is that men need to feel this respect from those around. And when we don't feel respected, we close off and we shut down and picture the tight fist.
That's true.
Which then in say in a marriage relationship,
It's awful.
it doesn't. It is, and it doesn't communicate to your spouse what she needs, which is to feel loved.
Right.
And so when you're both are trying to feel what you need to feel and not feeling it, it creates what Emerson calls the crazy cycle. Anyway, it's hardwired in us, man.
Yeah,
You're right.
I didn't want to go there because I knew we were talking about a different topic.
No, it's cool. It's
All
cool, though. I wanted to affirm and recognize the language that you were using for what it was.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? I mean, because man, that's interesting. Like to your upbringing. If one side is regimented, follow rules, don't get out of line. We don't have a lot of money, don't have time to waste.
Pretty much.
And then the other side is
now. I will say this about the other side. There were times when it was lifestyles of the rich and shameless. However, there were still always rules.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, there was never a time where it was woohoo.
Do whatever you want. But you were afforded some really interesting opportunities.
Oh, some tremendous opportunities. Right? Yeah, and it's funny because years down the road, and my father, Jack, and our relationship was tumultuous at best.
Okay.
And it was years later that we actually became friends. And then, you know what? Then we became good friends.
Okay.
Now, there was never truly a father-son relationship, but I can honestly say I loved him and I know that he loved me.
Mm-hmm.
But it took a while. He did not know. He didn't have the tools to be a good dad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's learned or he just didn't want to know. And he came clean with me years later and he said, look, I never wanted to be a dad. Mm-hmm. He goes, I had no desire. I had my business. This is what I wanted to do. You know, kind of a mindset of my dad. He once told me, he said, the measure of success is when a group of your peers recognizes you as an expert in their field or in your field. He said, that is a true measure of success. And so there's your 1950s logic,
yeah,
okay?
Yeah. I just thought of Mad Men all of a sudden.
Right.
Like as soon as you said that, I'm like,
Yeah,
I've seen that somewhere.
I'm thinking, Pop, I'm thinking there's got to be a little bit more here.
Yeah.
But, that and jazz music, man. I mean, that was it.
So what would you say? Because I mean, I'm hearing this one, and this was your real dad, correct?
Correct.
All right,
yeah.
And so
we'll
then
we'll just call him Jack.
Jack. All right, so Jack, and then the other one, the stepdad, his name is
Lynn.
So Lynn, did he want to be your dad to you? Was he like
when we moved when my mom married Lynn? He already had 4 boys.
Okay.
All right. Now, he had his 4. When I moved in, one of them went away and lived with the mom, and I'm not sure why. I just don't know.
Okay.
I never knew him. I think that I met him maybe twice, but gosh, man, I was a kid. I don't know. I will say that he was one of those raging alcoholics. He was an abusive man.
Lynn was?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, truly. I mean, I watched him beat the living hell out of my mother. And as a child, I will say this, there's no worse feeling than not being able to stand up and doing anything.
Helpless.
And doing anything.
Yeah, feeling powerless.
He was verbally abusive to his own kids, but for whatever reason, I had a shroud, and I'm not sure if it was because you're not mine. Now he was never directly mean to me. I mean, I did get the strap. I mean, if need be.
Okay.
I mean, but he never seemed to pick on me as much as he did some of his other kids.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
So in that aspect, I feel very lucky.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, as we moved up, I will tell you a story of Lynn, and this will put you kind of in the mindset of his logic. We were in Washington, D.C., and this is one of those proud moments where I think about this, and I had to revisit it, and I reached out to him actually about 10 years ago. We're in D.C., and I was very young, probably 6. My little brother was just born, so he was still a baby. But we're standing in front of the Iwo Jima sculpture. All right, and I don't know if you've ever seen that live and in person, but it is magnificent.
Yeah.
And it is truly a testament. And everybody else had just kind of scattered, and all of a sudden it's just me and Daddy Lynn. And I'm holding his hand and I'm looking at this thing, and I said, wow, who owns that statue? And he says, I do. And I said, 6.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah, like, really?
How much? How much do you own, right? And he holds his hand out, and he's holding my hand, and he just kind of he points to just the sliver of his thumbnail, and he says, maybe that much. And I didn't get it. And it took me years later to realize he was talking about being a part of something larger than yourself. Mm-hmm. That's when you can take ownership. And it was one of those cool patriotic moments. I was filled with pride.
Yeah.
And didn't even know why I was filled with pride.
Yeah.
But that's just how that guy was. You talk about respect, and we were talking about that. He was the demander of respect.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That was a Gandalf moment. You don't understand what he's saying until like 20 years later.
Right.
Exactly. And it was one of those, D-Day experiences. And this probably 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Really. And he had reached out to me on Facebook. Okay. And we were quasi-friends. The true relationship is this. We moved away. We moved out of an abusive situation, a horrible relationship. And to me, it was out of sight, out of mind. Never have to deal with him again, Yeah. And I never thought twice about it. I just kept on moving forward.
So
I don't know if that's weird or not.
No, it's not, man. Like everyone's story is different.
It sounds a little bit like this is
it's that self-preservation.
Exactly.
Exactly. You get to that point, and you're like, you know what? I'm done with this, and now let's move on to this.
Yep.
Hey, I'm going into 6th grade.
That's
how you cope.
At that time, that's how we protect ourselves. And so I get it. I have moments of that, like in my life,
absolutely,
and such. And so I'm looking at you, and I'm going, man, you're a great dad. I think you're someone like people know and respect in the community. I'm wondering, when did how in the world did you get to this, like from that? And so, like, when did you know, like, I'm not this boy anymore. I'm a man.
Well, you've heard some of the conversations that go on in this shop. Sometimes we're all back in 9th grade.
The middle school, I would go even early in that. The middle school boy, 5th grader, just coming into knowledge of himself. I would say we're there sometimes, but
I would truly say that. Again, I'll go back to being put in a position where you get to see some of the nicer things in life. I think it's exposure. It's being exposed to the Muirfield country clubs of the world and being exposed to, a ride in a nice car with air conditioning,
Yeah.
And where those might seem like little teeny insignificant things, to me in my world, they were not. Okay. Because when we moved to Columbus, Ohio, we actually stayed with Lynn Slack's brother, who was my Uncle Roger at the time, on Weber Road. Now, Weber Road was not horrible. It was not a horrible area at the time. But my mom had the opportunity to run a daycare, which was called McGinnis School. And it was right there at Oakland Park, or it was actually East North Broadway and Silver Drive. And it sits there now. It's a doggy daycare. As you go, it's right in front of All Crane.
Yeah.
All right? Now, we didn't have a pot to piss in. Okay. And it was Mom, my little brother Patrick, and myself. And we lived at that school. Okay. We lived at that school. I went to Como Elementary.
Okay.
And that was a formidable time. I mean, it was.
Okay.
That was one of those times in my life where, I watched my mom literally trying to wring out the milk out of the carton so that my brother would have enough milk in his cereal.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. We're adding a little bit of water. Don't tell your brother.
Yeah.
Pardon me. But you see moments like that at 11 and you want to do better for yourself.
Sure.
And as I got older, and again, it's part of that two-world aspect as well. Well, when I'm at my grandmother's place, my grandmother's summer home in Highlands, North Carolina, I get to eat this, and I'm having steak on Tuesday night, not Friday. We've got cloth napkins.
Yeah.
It's some silly things like that seem like they're insignificant, but you know what? Growing up, it made a difference.
Okay.
And I was blessed. And you know what? My first job in the public sector was just that. I worked at Rack's Roast Beef. And I'm very fortunate to have had a manager, a store manager, that took an active interest in the community in helping the kids move up and forward.
Okay.
And you know what? That guy's a dear friend of mine today.
Yeah.
You know?
I've heard you speak of him before, and it seems like he kind of took you under his wing, like
Absolutely.
mentor-like, and
Yes.
began to mentor you and such, and it left a lasting impact
I would
on
agree.
you as a person. Would you say that he was very like instrumental in you becoming a man?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Frank, if you're listening, and I love you, brother, I appreciate you, everything that you did. But the truth is, there's enough kids out there that will not have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bummer. It's truly sad because there's a ton of guys out there that probably, given the time and opportunity, would make that. They
Sure.
would help make that commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Mentoring a kid is you know what, 9 times out of 10, and I was not a bad kid.
Mm-hmm.
I was lost a little bit of the time, but you know what? He was the guy that was able to rein me in and say, hey, look, you know what? You're okay. There's nothing really wrong with you. You know?
A little belief in you.
Yeah.
A
You
little
know
love
what I
in you,
mean?
yeah.
And I do believe that there's really no bad kids. It's a ton of bad parents, but
Oh, we mess up.
yeah, I know now. But you know, a lot of times it is confidence.
Yeah.
Kids just lack it, or direction. And sometimes we got to just help steer the ship back to the right lane.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's a big deal.
Yeah, so I have no idea whether or not we got back to your original question.
Which was I think you were aiming there. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like there came a point. I mean, there was this person in your life who was mentoring you. I'm pretty sure there was others.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
and I would love to give Frank all the credit and all the kudos. And again, he did a tremendous job with the lump of clay that he had. But you know what? I was just a lucky guy. I had enough common sense to know that, hey, look, this is wrong. This is really wrong. You know, I'll flirt with this one that's a little bit wrong, but I'm not going way over there. You know, and I had a girlfriend. I had a serious girlfriend who had older brothers, and one of those dads and families that were very active.
Okay.
Okay, and it's people like that people that come in and out of your life, you know, that just kind of help guide you back to where you need to be.
Absolutely.
You take a little bit from this guy, you take a little bit from this
That guy,
guy,
yeah.
and
Get to see an alternative.
absolutely,
Right?
yes, and you're right. It's all about options. It's all about choices.
Yeah.
Sometimes, unfortunately, it's not about options, but it is about choices.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of who I wanted to become was based on seeing different dads interact.
Sure.
You know, mine wasn't really around.
Okay.
You know, he was a check dad. You know, I
What do you mean? Explain that. What do you mean by that?
was a check dad, meaning, you know what? If he paid his child support.
Okay, got
which
it.
was, you know, I think
the
at the
check.
time was like
Right, wrote the check.
$75. You know, but I believe that had my mother ever reached out to him and said, Jack, here's the opportunity, here's the situation. I know when I was a kid, when I was 13 years old, I was in that 13-year-old trouble stage. And she had about had it and said, you know what? You're going to live with your father. Down I go. Well, my dad has no place for a 13-year-old in his life. He doesn't know what he's going to do. So what did I do? I went to work with him. So now here's the cool part. Being summertime, he had this big project at his job, and he had picked up a couple of older high school kids who also worked for him for the summer. So again, the mentoring. Yeah. I had some older guys, stud football players from down in Florida, and 17, 18-year-old, they were getting ready to go into college.
Okay.
They were a little on the wild side, but good kids. Okay. At the end of the day, they were good, respectful kids. And we worked hand in hand together, and they took sort of half an interest in the boss's kid.
Yeah.
And they would tell me when I was screwing off and when I wasn't.
Hey, Curtis, stop.
Yeah. Stop being a knucklehead, and you better go this way. But again, you know what? There's 3 months where, Dad wasn't really around, which was really supposed to be what was going on.
Sure.
Okay? But I got lucky and fell into that.
Okay.
So fell into the fact that I had 2 guys that took an active interest.
Okay.
Which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't have to.
Well, and at 13, you're looking at these guys like
awestruck.
They work. They walk on water. Yeah. They can do no wrong,
he knows
right?
How to use a power saw.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I want to be like those guys someday.
Absolutely.
I want to walk the Pantheon that they walk in.
Well, as I said in the intro, we were excited to capture Curtis's conversation and bring it to you. You've just heard part 1. I promise you that part 2 is coming next week, and it's going to go deeper into his story, his pain, his recovery, the things that he's experienced, wisdom that he has to share. And so hang with us. That's coming next week, and looking forward to that. So with that, let's call it here, and until next week, adios. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.